Folks, yesterday, President Trump was and did have a meeting with the people from the Harley-Davidson company. The meeting was initially scheduled to take place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is where Harley-Davidson is based out of. But the president, at the last moment, decided to hold a meeting at the White House. Now, there are a couple of reasons why the president might have decided to change the location. One of them was because there might have been more people there holding rallies in opposition to President Trump, but the other might have been because Sheriff David Clarke would have more than likely have appeared at that meeting with Harley-Davidson. And as we all know, President Trump doesn't like a loser. And according to this story, Sheriff Super Coon Clarke may finally have bitten off a little more than he can chew. There has been a suit filed accusing Milwaukee Sheriff of abuse of power in airport incident. This may be the lawsuit, and there have been several that have been filed against him and his department, but this may be the one that finally takes down Sheriff David Super Coon Clarke Jr. Let me play you the video clip of the story itself.
A short exchange on an airplane has turned into a civil lawsuit against Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke, 6 deputies, and Milwaukee County itself.
Dan Black claims he was unlawfully detained after a brief interaction between him and the sheriff. Fox 6's Beverly Taylor is in the newsroom with the latest on this story. Beverly?
That interaction happened on a flight from Texas back to Milwaukee on January 15th. The lawsuit claims Black shook his head at the sheriff, who was also on board the flight and wearing Dallas Cowboys gear. When the plane landed, he says the sheriff signaled for deputies to detain him, and he was questioned for 15 minutes, including about his politics, before being escorted out of the airport. The lawsuit alleges Clarke had no jurisdiction to arrest him for something that happened in Texas, and the deputies are being sued because they did nothing to stop the unlawful arrest. The lawsuit alleges a reasonable Milwaukee County sheriff would not have ordered his deputy sheriffs to stop, arrest, and interrogate a citizen for shaking his head. Black's attorney, William Sultan, says the complaint was filed with Milwaukee County a few weeks ago, and it was hoped that the county would investigate and take corrective measures. But instead, he says the sheriff threatened his client with violence. Black is seeking a monetary award, but does not ask for a specific dollar amount. We reached out to both Sheriff Clarke and Milwaukee County Executive Chris Abele for comment. Both said they do not comment on pending litigation. But earlier this month, Abele did apologize to Black for the incident. In the newsroom, Beverly Taylor, Fox 6 News.
Okay, Beth, thanks for the...
All right, so that's the story itself. And
today I'm...
Sorry about that, folks. But let me read you the actual story itself. Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke called one of his critics a snowflake, but a new lawsuit claims the tough-talking favorite of the far right is so delicate that he had a fellow passenger detained for looking at him wrong. The lawsuit was filed in U.S. District Court by attorneys for Dan Black, who said he asked Clarke if he was indeed the sheriff while boarding a flight from Dallas to Milwaukee last month. When Clarke replied that he was, Black said he simply shook his head in response. Black said that when the plane landed, deputies were waiting for him. He asked he was detained. He said he was detained, questioned, and escorted out of the airport. He filed a complaint with the sheriff's office over the incident, but attorney William Sutton told Law News that Clarke and his office had not cooperated with the investigation. I would have been fine if I filed this complaint and responded and apologized. I probably would have left it there, Black told Milwaukee WDJT TV on Thursday. Instead, Clarke's department posted a meme with Black's photo calling him a snowflake and stating that next time he or anyone else pulls this stunt on a plane, they may be knocked out. So now Black has filed suit against Clarke, 6 deputies, and Milwaukee County seeking unspecified damages for unlawful stop and arrest. It was Mr. Black's hope that the county would investigate the matter and impose appropriate corrective measures, Sutton told Law News. Sheriff Clarke, however, responded to the complaint by threatening Mr. Black with violence and encouraging others to follow suit. Law News has posted the entire filing online. Last month, Milwaukee County Executive Chris Abley apologized to Black and blasted Clarke for posting the meme and making a juvenile threat. Local media reports that the sheriff's office has declined to comment due to the pending lawsuit. Although registered as a Democrat, Clarke has become a right-wing media darling, and a report in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel this week said the sheriff earned $220,172 in speaking fees, gifts, lodging, airfare, and other travel-related expenses in 2016. That's significantly more than his $132,290 annual salary as sheriff. While he made at least 34 speaking appearances around the country last year, at least 4 people died in that same period in a jail run by Clarke, including an infant and a man who died of thirst as he reportedly begged for water for days. Clarke has blamed the deaths on a healthcare worker and the inmates themselves. Yeah, the inmates were responsible for getting that guy water. Now here's another clip from the current lawsuit filing from a different TV station.
He doesn't dispute a single thing I say. He posts my full complaint.
Dan Black responded Wednesday to Sheriff David Clarke's Facebook post after Black filed a formal complaint against the sheriff. The interaction stems from their flight from Dallas Sunday.
I see him, he's a Milwaukee official, and he's flying back to Milwaukee on the big game day wearing Cowboys gear. I'm surprised I'm the only one who noticed or said anything to him.
Dan Black says he's a law-abiding, peaceful guy. On the plane, he asked Clarke if he was the sheriff. Then Black shook his head. Clarke wrote on Facebook today, "Next time he or anyone else pulls this stunt on a plane, they may get knocked out." The sheriff said he does not have to wait for some goof to assault him. He reserves the reasonable right to preempt a possible assault.
I don't like people fighting. It's not, and for him to come back and say he's going to knock me out, that's more confrontational than I ever was to him.
Black recorded video after they got off the plane as he says the sheriff ordered a half-dozen deputies and 2 canines to escort him to a waiting area to be questioned, then escorted Black out of the airport.
Civility, decency, and respect, that's the bare minimum.
County Executive Director of Communications Melissa Baldoff says Black's complaint will be forwarded to the Ethics Board for review.
It is upsetting, again, that the sheriff would be using his taxpayer-funded social media account to make a preemptive threat of violence against a private citizen.
I have opinions about the way he's abandoned this county to go on the campaign trail, but I didn't say anything like that. I could have. I didn't because I didn't want a confrontation. I didn't want to be thrown off the plane.
So the sheriff's assertion that Black presented a threat in Dallas presents a common sense question. Why didn't the sheriff alert the flight crew and law enforcement on the plane in Dallas? We'll find more out as we continue to try to get an answer from the sheriff. We've contacted him back on Sunday and still have not heard from him. Live in Milwaukee, Terry Cedar, WISN 12 News.
Well, folks, as I indicated, this might be the one that finally takes Mr. Clarke down, and it may in fact get Mr. Clarke recalled. The reason for that being the low approval rating on Sheriff Clarke. Now, I'm going to play you the video regarding his poor polling numbers. Hold on one sec. Here's the polling video on Super Coon's polling numbers as far as his popularity is concerned.
More local news now. A new public policy poll says Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke's job approval numbers are falling.
The public policy poll says 62% of voters disapprove of the job he's doing, 31% approve. 1,200 county voters were polled. Clarke was on WNOV radio this morning. He said he has no plans to challenge Tammy Baldwin for U.S. Senate in 2018.
I love being the sheriff of Milwaukee County. The Senate, there's a draft Clarke for Senate movement. I don't have anything to do with it. I never say never, but that's not really at the top of my list right now.
Clarke says he has talked with President Trump about the possibility of a job in the Trump administration.
Now the heat is really turning up because people are now going to the governor and asking the governor to get involved in the removal of Clarke. Check this one out.
Meanwhile, Governor Walker responds to calls from another state lawmaker who wants Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke removed from his office. In a letter to the governor, State Representative David Crawley says Clarke should be removed from office, quote, for his willful neglect of duties, of repeated inappropriate and incendiary comments, his promotion of violence, and use of intimidation against innocent civilians. Crawley is critical of several recent events involving the sheriff, including his comments on social media and the investigation to the deaths at the Milwaukee County Jail. Governor Walker says unless the sheriff does anything illegal, it's up to the voters.
Any position, be it sheriff or any others, where they're elected by the people, they're ultimately accountable to the people. And the only time historically a governor's got involved in any of those constitutional offices is if someone clearly violated the law.
Crawley is the fourth state lawmaker from Milwaukee to make such a statement. The others are Senator Chris Larson and Representative Jonathan Brostoff and Christine Sinicki. We reached out to the sheriff's office for comment and have not received a response.
It sometimes feels like he's the lead character in a B- action movie.
Milwaukee County Executive Chris Abele confirms a complaint against Sheriff David Clarke is now being investigated by the Office of the Comptroller Audit Services Division.
They're gathering their data and their facts right now.
The complaint and investigation stem from an incident on an airplane earlier this month. Dan Black says he shook his head at Sheriff Clarke because the sheriff was wearing Dallas Cowboys gear and then ended up being questioned and escorted out of Milwaukee's airport by deputies.
We've tried for more than a week to get a response from Sheriff David Clarke about the accusations.
Clarke issued a response on Facebook today which says in part, in an act of political grandstanding, the political witch hunt continues by Democrat politicians and operatives. This is nothing more than an attempt to harass and bully Sheriff Clarke. This is fake news. County Supervisor Deanna Alexander is one of Clarke's supporters.
I will look at that even-handedly to see if it warrants any action, but I would also recognize that the sheriff is a constitutional officer, so he does not report to the county board nor to the county executive.
Public safety is not a game. It's not a toy just to use to intimidate people who scare you or bother you.
Abele says voters will have the final say. In Milwaukee County, Terry Sater, WISN 12 News.
And in his Facebook post, the sheriff says the county executive does not have the authority to investigate the sheriff's office. He will not allow his deputies to be questioned by anybody from the county executive's office.
Now, I got a quick question for you guys. How many people, ordinary citizens, if they shook their head at another ordinary citizen, would be, in my opinion, accosted and detained at the end of a flight or at any other time? But Sheriff Clarke instead of being the victim of being bullied, is the actual bully here. And as any other good bully, he's basically making that claim. And as indicated previously in the video you just saw, he has instructed his deputies not to cooperate because, quote unquote, the local agency, Milwaukee County, and even the governor is claiming that they don't have any authority over him. Where have we heard that one before? And that is why the federal lawsuit has been filed, because the feds do have authority over him. Here's another video for your entertainment.
A controversial sheriff from Wisconsin is speaking in Minneapolis tonight. Sheriff David Clarke is known for his very public support for President Trump. Clarke often writes on Twitter about issues involving law enforcement, the Second Amendment, and the media. He made national headlines at last year's Republican National Convention for this statement, one day after the ambush-style killings of 3 Baton Rouge police officers.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to make something very clear. Blue lives matter in America.
Tonight's program featuring Sheriff Clarke is at the Mansion Uptown in Minneapolis. The nonprofit Right Way Minnesota is hosting the event called the Celebration of Law and Order. Hennepin County Sheriff Rich Stanek is also participating, and people did buy tickets to go. We will have more on that tonight in our news at 10.
Yeah, I wonder if they're basically... Now, there are a bunch more of those videos for Sheriff Super Coon Clarke, and I'm not going to just post all of them, but I think you pretty much got the gist of things. And I got a question, personal curiosity. Just how much Grecian formula does this guy use? Because every time you see him, that goatee that he's got there, it's black as hell. But he's always either bald on top or wearing a sheriff's hat. So, I mean, this guy is not 60 or 70 or anything, but that goatee, it definitely needs some work. And anyway, as I said, this might be the one. This federal lawsuit might be the one that finally takes him down. Now, obviously, no jail time is going to be involved here because it's a civil lawsuit filed in federal court with monetary damages being sought. But this could possibly accelerate the investigations into the lawsuit where he covered up for a deputy who actually caused a traffic accident. They arrested the victim of the traffic accident, accused her of causing it, even though they knew full well from video that they captured from airport cameras in the vicinity that it was the deputy that caused the accident. They harassed this woman for 6 months with charges remaining until she hired an attorney and filed a lawsuit in, of all places, again, federal court, regarding the harassment, unlawful arrest, etc., etc., etc. That federal lawsuit is still pending, as well as an investigation into the deaths of the 4 people that occurred in his jail last year, including a newborn child. So the federal lawsuits are starting to pile up on Mr. Clarke. Hopefully, some brave Milwaukee County resident starts a recall on Mr. Clarke, and he is unceremoniously booted out of office on his Oreo ass.